2, 3.
On my epitaph, I'm going to have died by one prick or another, and my vicar has granted it. But when you think about that, one prick or that could be a penis, it could be a needle, haemophiliac, it's all pricks. Everyone has died by a prick of one sort, and that's how I see it.
I found out I was HIV positive about 6.5 years ago. Well, the first thing I did think about was that I was going to die. That just went through my head over and over again. You're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. And I'd look at myself in the mirror and then I would imagine what I would look like, really emaciated and ill, with lesions on my face and no hair and no teeth. And I had these really horrible nightmares about maggots eating me.
I was caught speeding. I was doing 96.64. Police pulled me over. He started giving me a lecture about, how am I going to get, the insurance, be sky high and the premiums and going to court and all this. And I said to him, spare the lecture. I could be dead by the time this, go to court.
Recently, one chum of mine phoned me and said, and he's 28, and he said, they've given me 6 months to live. But we made a joke about it. Sometimes say, in that case, let's have a martini. One does have to see the light side of these things.
You could get hit by a bus.
Everybody who I've told my status to has said, well, you might get run over by a bus tomorrow, and I will not get run over by a bus tomorrow. I really don't believe now that I'm going to die for a long, long time, but I do believe that I will die of AIDS when I die.
Personally, my blood work is really low, so the outlook is not that long term at all, but more short term. I don't think I'll be remembered, not when I'm dead. I mean, it's not like heterosexual society where you have children, grandchildren, a house to be remembered by. I've got nothing. Once I'm dying, that's it. There'll be no memory of me.
There was a particular part of my treatment where I was very ill. I was in a hospital bed and I thought I was going to die. And I did really think that this was it. So since then, mortality has been an issue. Insofar as, like, for example, I have to plan my funeral. I'm very conscious now that I have to practically save up, because if I die, or when I die, I'm going to leave bills behind.
I imagine my death is like from a film where guy who's HIV, AIDS, dies in a hospital bed and he's got all his family around him and all his friends, and they're supporting him through it, and his mother sits on the edge of the bed and says, okay, you can go now, and he slowly slips away. Oh, I don't think mine will be like that. I imagine my death to be really lonely and quick, hopefully. In a way, I'd prefer to be on my own. I don't want anybody to see me all not in control, just lying there thin and gaunt and ill. It's a horrible way to be, isn't it?
Peace. I was diagnosed as having AIDS 2 years ago. I've got Kaposi sarcoma, which is a cancer of the blood vessels. No big deal. But periodically I'll check how, the lesions are doing, if they need treatment. Dignity, my dear.
I find it very difficult to come to terms with the fact that I have this virus in me and look so healthy. You have this bomb ticking away in you, and yet nothing happens. I'm as healthy as you could be. My blood count is incredibly high. I've got probably the same blood count that you people have.
I've been diagnosed for 14 years now. I went to the doctors. I was told to come back in a week. I went back, and all he said to me was positive. And it's been like sitting on death row for 14 years.
We met in August of '88, and we became very, 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 very close friends, and we enjoyed everything we did together, and we made each other's lives very, very happy.
With Warwick, it seemed to happen very quickly. About 6 months, 8 months before he died, there were signs that he wasn't very well. He was extremely tired. He was falling asleep at work. His libido had gone, and that worried him a lot.
I think it was in 1991 that I began to see some signs in him. His hair became very strange, because one of the signs with these illnesses is that your hair starts becoming very soft, and I thought something isn't quite right.
Throughout the whole 3 years, I mean, the subject of HIV had come up between us, but he'd sort of said, well, I've had a test and it was negative, so I'm okay. And me, being a very naive 19-year-old, thought, oh, I love this man, I want to be with him forever, and, there's no point in us using condoms. So I never did, really. Cesar, he had TB of the blood and various other things. So he did have AIDS, but he was extremely, extremely healthy looking. I mean, he was built like a boxer, I mean, he was black, very handsome, and incredibly robust and muscular and all that kind of thing. And so I always thought, well, he's going to last forever.
He was just tremendously afraid, I think. He had this fear of not coming out of hospital, and it was hard. I desperately wanted him to be peaceful, to be at peace.
When we got home, he actually broke down crying because he thought he would never see home again. It was very important for him to know that he was safe within our relationship, that he had a home to come to, and that he wouldn't die on his own, I think.
I didn't talk to Warwick about death. He wouldn't talk about it. One of the very difficult things was when you want to kind of, hold somebody and spend what little time you believe there to be left, with that person. But that person doesn't want to face up to the illness. It's a very hard thing. And the best thing I could do was be around, really. And I wanted to be around, in those last weeks. So. I looked after his body. The more I visited him, he seemed to kind of deteriorate from day to day. He became incontinent. By this time, the hospital had fitted a little bed in the room, and I was able to stay with him and take him to the showers and shower him and clean him up when he wanted to be clean, and it was a great honour to be able to do that for anybody.
Steve
Was very aware that at this stage in life there is nothing you can do about it. No. Just let's go and get it over and done with as quickly as possible. So he did. He only lived for a year and 5 months after he was found to be positive.
Warwick kept a diary, and it was after he died that I got the diary. He'd made an entry for the 3 weeks prior to death. He just was saying how unhappy he was to be in hospital, and because of his resistance to medication, it was quite a rapid deterioration.
Steve was in hospital and he knew that he was going. He said, look, we've been together for 19 years and I wanted, for our 20th anniversary, I wanted us to have diamond rings, eternity rings. I found the rings and put it on his fingers, and then he just had totally emaciated hands and arms. We had a little ceremony and he was sort of listening very carefully to what I was saying, and he lifted his arm up and looked at the ring and then dropped the arm, and from then on he just shut down.
And the last week, it was hell. Friends would come because they, wanted to give him a little bit of soup, or they wanted to wash his mouth, and I didn't want that. He was my partner. It was my responsibility. I know that gay men can't get married, but it's what it says, for better, for worse, or whatever, and that's how I looked at it.
I was working in the National Health Service as a nursing officer. When I went to do my rounds, I went into Gordon's room and I was absolutely gobsmacked. I saw this man who I idolised for years, who was the epitome of masculinity in my books. The whole side of his face had swollen as a result of various treatments. I watched this man continuously as an inpatient, going to and from the chemotherapy suite and getting worse as it went on, and I watched him die.
He was sitting in a chair by the window, and he'd fallen asleep with a newspaper across his legs. And he just had a look about him, a translucency almost, and he just seemed so very frail. I mean, it was quite clear that he was going to die at any time, and he died about 7:30 that evening. Love never dies.
Ray was dying. I spoke to his family and everything, and they said, Ray wants you to be here with him, and he's very, very ill, and to be honest, it doesn't look like he's going to live for very much longer. Can you come out here? And I thought about it really long and hard. He was my first love, and I couldn't have coped with seeing him dying, and then knowing that possibly one day that was going to be me too. So, so he died and I wasn't with him. It had taken me so many years to get myself back together, really, and I just felt that if I'd gone over there and actually experienced him dying, that it would probably have just put me right back to how I'd been when I was first diagnosed, and I really didn't feel that I could cope with that.
His heart just stopped beating, and this bleep, bleep, bleep went, And they all came in, and they all tried to set up this machine, and I said, no, you're not going to revive him. He's gone through enough. By that time, it was 5 or 6 minutes, and they couldn't do anything anyway.
All of a sudden, I noticed that his breathing had slowed down, and was very calm and started to fade away. I shook him. I was screaming, "Don't go yet," but of course it's his death, it's not mine. So he decides when he goes, and you can't hold that back. He had suddenly stopped, and it was very quiet, and I broke down altogether and started to howl like an animal. I climbed onto the bed and held his head so that wouldn't be quite so painful. I think it's quite important that people see that we homosexuals are not just sex objects and not regard each other as sex objects.
Steve.
That we actually are able to sustain relationships and see them through even beyond death.
When we first went into hospital, I had to hold his hand and kind of reassure him and be optimistic and say we'll be out in a week, 10 days. And, I believed that. He didn't. He really didn't. And coming to terms with the fact that he was right was very, very difficult.
It was a terrible shock, and I went right away, and there was a notice about the bed saying this patient is paralyzed, and I thought, oh my God, that's awful, and he certainly was, because he couldn't move, he couldn't speak, he didn't open his eyes ever, and all the rest of the time that I saw him. They didn't know what he was dying of, and that's why they couldn't save him. And he died on Saturday. That's 2 weeks ago this Saturday.
I knew that this night of all nights I needed to be with him. So I spent the night with him. He was uncovered, so his face was open. And I held him and stroked him and slept fitfully, of course. I would stroke him and he would get colder and colder. And then rigor mortis set in, but rigor mortis fades away again and the body becomes pliable again. And then I was so cold. It was just colder than ice. I couldn't believe how cold this whole body was. And I found it very strange to all the silence. It was that the whole air stood still. It was as if everything was waiting for the passing. When I woke up, I looked at him, and he was. It was just wonderful, the smile on his face. It must have been an amazing place where he went to. It was just this radiant smile on his face.
Ian. When he died, I helped embalm him. If anyone came in, fuck off and get out. We just want to be alone. We got things to talk about. And I asked him why. He'd gone like, Even though his eyes were shut, as I was going round to different parts of his body, it was as if he was watching me clean his feet or clean his legs. But he knew that I was cleaning. Cleansing him has cleansed me. Ian's funeral, I tried to make it as light-hearted as possible. Ian sat at one head of the table in his coffin, and I was at the other one, and I went up and I put a plate of sandwiches in the coffin, and after it was finished, I went up and I pulled out an empty plate.
Steve used to do a lot of drag and things, and was very good at it. I gave him this elaborate drag funeral, which was very funny and very nice and all very typically Steve. And I have this nightmare that he was hovering over that saying, I want a religious funeral.
All gay men with AIDS will go to heaven because we are living in hell now. There's a place for us, somewhere a place for us.
Peace and quiet.
I really hope that there is nothing. The idea of being judged and going on to hellfire and brimstone and all that is not attractive.
There's a place for us, somewhere a place for us, peace and quiet and open air waits for us somewhere.
Love never dies. I miss him dearly. I miss him as much now as when he died. I still think of him a lot.
I was in bed and I was in absolute agony. And I had to call a nurse. I was in a fever, sweating, and she gave me some morphine, and it didn't seem to do the trick. She was increasing the morphine, and I was in real agony. It was just as if I heard my partner's voice. And there was a beautiful white light. I can remember this white light. And I can remember this voice, and it was definitely my partner's voice, saying, it's not long now. So I know that it won't be long now, and I'll be there with Ian, and I just looking forward to see him again.
After he died, I think I was sitting around for a month or two, totally dazed. And all of a sudden, I heard this voice saying, I am all right.
I would like to think that, there is this existence after death. What I desperately want is to meet him again, and all the friends and loved ones that have gone.
I think Steve is, if you like, in heaven. And I can imagine him to be there working with the clouds, making frocks out of them, and sticking stars as sequins in them, and doing outrageous shows with all the others who went before him. I think there would be quite a riot up there.
I know so many people that have died from AIDS, and I can kind of feel them around me now, and I just know that when I die that I will meet all those people again, and I just think that's going to be quite amazing, really. I am afraid of getting some very debilitating, disfiguring illness which will make me dependent on people that I love. That does scare me. But dying itself, I imagine, at that point would be quite a beautiful thing, really, and quite a release.
I can visualize me in a scenario that I'm terrified of, which is being in a hospital ward in a year or maybe a few years, I don't know, and being on my own. I will have friends, but I'm afraid that in between they come and see me and nurses are busy, that I'll die. I want to know when the right time is. I don't want to be confused, and I don't want to die alone.
I've contemplated suicide twice. There was no money, there was no flat. I had nothing to live for, plus I was ill at that time. Why bother?
When we go, there's a place and you can walk about, and it's got condom trees and every sort of tree that you want, but you must use the condom. If you're going to have sex, you must use the condom or you're out.
I really hope very much that when we die, we don't die in a panic, and I don't want to do that. And I think that's the only thing that really bothers me.
I've kind of reached, if you like, a kind of state of peace about the whole thing. I've seen so many times when people are ill and dying, some guys are having to tell their parents they're gay, let alone the fact that they've got AIDS and may not be around for much longer, which is a bit of a bitch.
I won't have anyone going, hush, hush, we mustn't let the neighbours know, and, oh, do you know what she died of? I want it to be well known that I died of AIDS. So what?
I think it'd be awful if I died of AIDS on my gravestone for my family to come up and thrown it in their face again. It's difficult enough for me to cope with, never mind other people. I don't think I'll be remembered when I die as, our loving brother or son or whatever. I think I will be forgotten about quite quickly.
I've always felt that memorials are very meaningless. What matters are the memories, and I feel that way about, myself. I don't long to leave my mark on this world. You do that in people's memories. Dignity, my dear.
Okay, darlings, bless you, bye-bye. 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 Okay, darlings.